Hi, my name is Robert. This video is designed to give you step-by-step detailed instruction on completing the task at hand. Visit my YouTube channel and watch my disclaimer video. And please like, share, and subscribe. I hope you find the information you're looking for. Thank you very much for watching. I'm about to do a service that is often neglected on many cars, and that is a coolant flush. The reason why you want to do a coolant flush is the coolant in your motor goes through extreme temperature changes. It goes from, let's say, 70 degrees in the morning. When you start it up 2-3 minutes later, it's at 180 degrees. When you're in bumper-to-bumper traffic, it's 220 degrees. So this constant changing of the temperature of the coolant causes the coolant, basically how it's manufactured, to break down and lose its ability to do everything that the manufacturer needs it to do in the coolant system. It lubricates, it maintains a certain temperature, it stops the car from overheating. So you need to refresh this coolant, kind of like oil, but fortunately it's not as often as oil. So I'm going to go ahead and flush the coolant in my 850. Here are the tools and equipment you need to do the radiator flush job on most cars, and specifically this Volvo 850. I got the 3/8 inch ratchet and the 13mm short extension and drive in case you want to open up the drain plug on the motor, back of the motor, to get the coolant out of the motor. I got the little screwdriver, the 1/4 inch drive, the 13mm socket deep well, and the 7mm socket to get clamps loose. I got the adjustable jaw wrench, the large adapter screwdriver, 14 T40. I got the T40 bit over there in case I need it with my speed handle. I got a large flat tip screwdriver, and I got a magnet. You also want to use some gloves to protect your hands. Get 4 or 5 gallons. I have 5 gallons of distilled water. You get the approved coolant for your vehicle and a drain pan to drain your coolant into. Some cars, their owner's manual. Mine, on the back, it has a quick reference guide. The number 2 cap is coolant, and it tells you 50/50, and see page 816. On page 816, it talks about the coolant. It tells you what type of put. Genuine Volvo coolant. What I found out about the Volvo coolant is the Volvo coolant from the manufacturer is what's called HOAT qualified. So this brand, which is a Valvoline product, this is a HOAT coolant. It's good for 5 years, 150,000 miles. Okay, when looking at the bottle and you get down here, all the yellow is the HOAT approved vehicles. And when you come down here and look under specifications, if this thing could come in focus, it'll say that it's HOAT approved. Yeah, it says the second line down there, important customer information, there's HOAT, and it's not approved for that. It's for HOAT G5 applications. So then it repeats it down at the bottom line. Has a certain chemical mix that's HOAT chemistry based. So there you have it. You want a HOAT approved formula in your Volvos. Now the Volvo stuff from the dealer is colored blue. This stuff is colored kind of a gold, and it also shows you there when you need more than a 50/50 mix. A 50/50 mix is good for ambient temperatures from -34 degrees Fahrenheit to 265 degrees Fahrenheit, which is when it'll boil in your motor. So if you're not in -34 degrees or colder, you shouldn't be mixing, 60, 70, 80% coolant. Now I'm going to do a little bit more than the drain and refill. If I drain the radiator, I'll get about half of the coolant out. The system holds almost 8 quarts of coolant. Draining the radiator will drain some of the coolant lines, but the motor will still have a lot of coolant in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drain the radiator Then I'm going to flush the system with water. Now when flushing your coolant system, you really want to take into account to how dirty it is. Mine, when I looked in my bottle, I know it's plenty dirty. I've had the car and put about 43,000 miles on it. I noticed the other day the coolant in the reservoir bottle looked dirty. So it would be good to use a chemical to go ahead and flush the coolant system with. Some people use CRL. It's good for cleaning out rusty things and loosening up crud. You put that in there, you run it in the car for, let's say, 10-15 minutes, then you drain it out. Some people use radiator flush that you get from the auto parts store. That's good. It has instructions on there whether to bring it up to temperature or not and flush it with that. Some people use, I've heard, dishwashing detergent. They take about a quarter of a cup, mix that in with water, pull it into the coolant system, run that through the coolant system for 5-10 minutes, and then flush that out. You know, if it's safe enough for you to run through your dishwasher, through your glasses, and through your rubber parts of your dishwasher, it ought to be fine to run through a car. It has rubber hoses and stuff like that as well. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to flush mine with running water while the motor runs. Now, part of the challenge of getting most of the old coolant out, or all of the old coolant out, is draining the radiator and then finding the drain on the block of the engine and draining that as well. So I'm going to go ahead and start draining the radiator. Then I'm going to show you where the drain on the block on this car is. And your car may have a picture of it in your owner's manual, or you may find it online somewhere. But if you want to drain all of it, you want to drain your radiator and your block. Now, on my car, it's not necessary, but some cars, they have a heater core that is closed and open according to the lever inside the car. But there you see the lines going into the heater core on the Volvo. They're open all the time. I don't think it's necessary to slide the slider to full hot on your air conditioner controls. But if you have a car and you're not sure, it's best to come inside while the car is running before you start all this and turn your temperature dial all the way to hot on both dials to make sure that those heater control valves are fully open, and it's allowing the coolant that's inside the car to drain out as well. When you're flushing the coolant system, you want to flush all the coolant out of the car. Now, the same coolant that goes through your radiator also goes through your heater core to heat you up in the wintertime. So you got coolant in your heater core that runs in the car. You got coolant that in your expansion tank, coolant in the motor, coolant in the radiator, and coolant through all of these hoses. So you want to make sure that you drain the coolant or flush the coolant throughout the entire system. First thing I'm going to do in the drain process is slowly open the expansion tank lid. These expansion tanks, some of them are under pressure, my system is, and it's equivalent to opening a radiator. If that temperature was above 150, I would not do this, but since it's down under 150, I would. And if you look down in there, that stuff doesn't really look like a coolant color. It looks yucky and dirty, so that's why I'm doing this flush. Since I have my reservoir cap open, I'm going to come down here and under the Volvo on the driver's side, and the splash pan, you can see that hole. Inside that hole, there's a nipple on the radiator that I think it takes a 13 millimeter. You turn that loose, you don't have to take it all the way out, and coolant should start to drain out of that. This piece of plastic plug shouldn't be in there hard, so I take this small screwdriver adapter along with a deep well socket number 13, and I twist it until the coolant starts coming out, draining it into a drain pan. Now, if you're trying to get all the coolant out with the by draining it, you get the car up on jack stands or ramps, you come under the middle of the car, so you're a little bit almost under the transmission side, the driver's side. You look up past the axle, and a little bit past the axle, you will see the drain plug for the rest of the coolant here. Right there. I'm going to put my finger around there on it so you can see it and easily identify it yourself. So if I reach over the axle, here's the drain plug to get the rest of the coolant out. Now, since I couldn't find my CRL and I don't want to run the dishwasher soap through my system, I'm going to flush mine wide open with the fresh water, tap water, and I want it to circulate through the entire system. So I'm going to go ahead and take my thermostat out. Now, if you're going to run your car and not take your thermostat out, you're going to have to add whatever you're going to add to flush it. You're going to have to button the system up, run it up to temperature, then drain that out. Add more flush in it, run it through the up to temperature so that your thermostat opens up and it circulates through the entire car, and then flush that out. One thing that always bothers me or makes me curious about draining out the coolant or flushing it and stuff is if you've been driving your car, your motor has a temperature. As you can see, the temperature of my motor is now 139. 5-10 minutes ago, it was 161. Now, they always encourage you to drain the oil when it's hot and to put fresh oil in. So to me, you're taking the oil that is in the car in excess of 160 degrees, and you're putting in oil that is room temperature or ambient temperature, about 80 degrees. If that doesn't mess up the motor, then maybe adding cold water or cold coolant to a motor that's not so hot would matter either. I personally don't have a desire to run water or anything through my motor that's in excess of 50 degrees different. I think that expansion and temperature difference may cause an issue, but I don't know how much choice I have. I could sit here and let this car sit here for another hour and maybe it'll cool down another 10-20 degrees since the hood is open, but I'm going to get on with it. So I'm going to go ahead, pull the top of my thermostat off, pull my thermostat out, put the housing back together, and that way when I'm running water through here, it'll be going through the entire system. The thermostat won't be stopping it because it's cold. Okay, I pulled those two T40s out of my thermostat housing and removed my thermostat, so it's there. Now I'm going to go ahead and just snug this back down because I'm going to pull the housing back off to put the thermostat back after all said and done, after I'm done flushing. Okay, I went back under the car, tightened that radiator drain finger tight. Now I'm ready to fill it up with whatever I'm going to flush it with, in my case. Now, I went on ahead and filled up the motor with tap water as much as I could. I know there's a lot of air in the system. It said it was at 100 degrees. So now I'm going to start the motor, and then I'm going to continue to fill the radiator system up with water until it stops filling. Now my system is designed to run under pressure, but since I'm doing a flush, I'm not too concerned with that. And it's not going to heat up because I'm going to keep putting cold water in here. So what I'm about to do now is I'm going to open up the drain cock on the bottom of the radiator and let water come out of that while I'm forcing water in the reservoir up top with the hose. As you can see, water's draining out the radiator. Now I'm going to come up here with the hose and keep the coolant overflow bottle filled. And I'm going to do this for about 5 minutes. So the system should be flushing this tap water through the entire system. Now if you have a drain pan to continue to catch all of that water, you're welcome to go ahead and do it. And since it's diluted, I don't think it'll harm anything in the environment. I drained most of it out the first time. This should be mostly tap water. On this side, you can see I have a leak here, And that's mostly because I pulled my thermostat out of my thermostat housing. And whenever you do that, you also take the gasket out so you don't have a seal in there stopping that from leaking. Now you want to go and peek at your temperature in your car every once in a while to make sure that you're not trying to overheat the car, which I doubt you will, pumping this tap water in there. Fortunate for me, I got my scan gauge so I can watch my motor temperature as I pump water through here, and I know that I'm not overheating the motor. Now the water in my bottle is finally starting to clear up where I can see the hole in the bottom of my bottle. Hopefully that's an indication that my motor is cleaning up as well. Also, the water coming out of the radiator now is starting to look clear. But, you know, in my personal opinion, tap water is just as dangerous as other corrosive agents may be or other cleaners may be. So I want to get all of this tap water out of the system before I button this up. The temperature on my motor is indicating 154 degrees, so it is rising even though I keep adding straight tap water to it. Okay, I've been running tap water through there for about 10 minutes, which to me, it should be plenty clean. So the next thing I'm gonna do, I got 5 gallons of distilled water. So the next 4 gallons, I'm gonna pour distilled water in here to hopefully flush the tap water out of the system. So now I'm adding distilled water to the system. Regardless of what you flush the system with, I think you should flush your last 4 things with straight distilled water. Whether you're flushing CRL, radiator coolant, or radiator flush, or dishwashing detergent, I think you should flush 4 gallons of distilled water through the system before you get to your final mix. As I continue to flush, the warmest the car has gotten is 155. As soon as you get the last of your 4th bottle in the coolant reservoir, go ahead and shut the car off and just let the rest of it. I emptied the last gallon into the coolant reservoir. I shut the car off. Now I decided to try to catch as much as I could while the car is off. It took me 6 minutes to pour 4 gallons of distilled water into the overflow reservoir while the car was running. So in this whole process, you're probably only going to flush about 8 gallons through the system. Now, I think the system, or that water coming out of there at 150 degrees, is actually too warm to plug that hole. But what my plans are is to go ahead and let the water drain out, reinstall my thermostat, change my bottle, put the 100% coolant in there, and then top it off with water. Okay, now that I got the bottle in place, I'm going to go ahead and top off my coolant after I put my thermostat in. Now, your thermostat and your coolant temp sensor are not expensive parts. When you're flushing your radiator system every 3 to 5 years, it may be a good excuse to put a new thermostat in. Thermostats are anywhere from $9 to $18 a piece, and that's good insurance that you got a nice new thermostat in. The coolant temp sensor, as you can see, it goes into the thermostat housing there. Those are normally about 50 or 60 bucks. And it's a good idea to change them together. If that coolant temp sensor hadn't been changed in your knowledge, I would go ahead and change it along with the thermostat. You're talking about a $65 investment to ensure that you get good readings and a good thermostat. Now I'm going back in with this Volvo thermostat, this Volvo style stat. You see it has a little bleeder hole or a weep hole there that allows air and just barely a little bit of fluid to go through, mostly air. And that is supposed to be at the highest point in the thermostat housing. So when I set this back in the housing, I'm going to make sure that little shaking tip there is pointed forward in the car. Okay, I got the thermostat in place, the gasket on the thermostat. The weep hole is in the highest point in the housing. This housing kind of tilts back with the motor, so the most highest point is the forward position. Now I'm going to bolt the housing back on. Now that rubber gasket will seal this system from leaking. I don't have to put any kind of gasket sealer or nothing like that. All I got to do is bolt it down and snug the bolts down. Now if you're a Volvo person and you've messed with these thermostat bolts before, this housing bolts, they're T40s and they're torque and they like to strip, so you got to be careful when putting them in and out. I got two of them. One of them, the teeth are a little butchered up, the other one's not, so I'm going to put the best ones closest to the oil cap to the back. It's harder to reach, and that's where you want your best bolt at. But it's probably good to replace these. You can see my thermostat replacement video to see what to replace them with. Strange thing happened while I was finishing up this coolant flush job. One of my YouTube viewers called and said that their car overheated. They have a fan that they believe malfunctioned, and they replaced their thermostat and drained and refilled your coolant. So it's a good thing to change those thermostat when you're doing this type of job. Okay, I got all my hose clamps connected, my thermostat in and bolted down, and then I came down here and tightened up the drain plug in the bottom of the radiator. Now the radiator housing is plastic and that drain plug is plastic, so just snug that down. You do not want to try to tighten that tight or you'll strip it and destroy a drain plug and possibly a radiator. Just snug that down, don't tighten it. And make sure if you took the plug loose on the back of your block that's tightened down as well. On this Volvo, it's a 13 millimeter, the same as the drain plug on the radiator. Okay, since this car has the level sensor inside the reservoir and I replaced it, I'm going to go ahead and turn the car on and start it for a couple of seconds before I fill up the coolant, because I want to make sure that I get a low coolant light on this new reservoir. Now that my system's all buttoned up, all the hoses and things are tightened, I'm ready to fill the system with coolant. Now I have a gallon of the straight coolant, the coolant that's recommended to go into the system, and here I check my capacity of the coolant system. It says 7.6 quarts. So about 1 gallon will be half of the 50-50 mix that I want to put in there. So my next step is to take a gallon of coolant, try to pour as much of it in the system as I can, and that'll be just about half, and I'll have a 50-50 mix. I've poured the coolant in the bottle. The bottle's a little bit more than the max mark, but I know there's air in the system that I need to burn. Now if you have a car that has a radiator with a radiator cap, you of course want to pour your coolant or water, whatever, directly into the radiator cap. After I get all the coolant in the system, I'll do any topping off with distilled water. I still have 1 gallon of distilled water left. Okay, I couldn't get any more coolant in here, so I put the cap on. So I'm going to drive it around a little bit. Whenever I need to go somewhere, the system will burp. In a day or two, providing that I don't get a low coolant light, I'll check the reservoir, and any topping off I'll go ahead and do it with the coolant first. But like I said, I should have some air in the system that will burp sooner or later, normally within the next 20 to 50 miles. Okay, while the car is running, I'm checking under it for leaks. I don't see any leaks anywhere, so I should be good to go. If you feel that this information was beneficial, please like it and share it with your social media friends. You can also subscribe to my channel so that you can get notification of future videos that I post. Visit my channel. I have all types of do-it-yourself videos there. You can leave questions here and I'll try to respond to them as quick as possible. You can also visit my website at robertspinner.com. Thanks again for watching.